новите евроинтеграции, несомнено и Холандија, чија помош во изминатиот период беше од големо значење за Република Македонија во најразлични области, од поттикот на предприемништвото и малите и средните предпријатија до подигнувањето на општествената свест за одредени социјално маргинализирани или дискриминирани групи. Од таму доаѓа и нашиот следен учесник во панелот, господин Роберт Фарла, меѓународен секретар на партијата Д66. Господине Фарла, имајќи ги предвид проблемите во еврозоната, светската финансиска криза, па и разликите меѓу земјите членки на Европската унија околу капацитетот на унијата за проширување, како цените дека може да влијае разрешувањето на овој спор меѓу земјата членка на Европската унија, Грција и земјата кандидат Македонија? Повелете.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Yvonne, I was a little bit amazed when I got the program for this gathering that you invited me to speak on this issue. And in the program it was stated that I could speak for half an hour. And I will try to give you a Dutch or maybe a Northwest European perspective. It's very easy. In Holland, it is felt that, and we often use the English expression, we have no dog in this fight. You know the expression actually means that we think that this is an important issue, but it's also, in the first place, a bilateral issue that has to be solved in a good manner between two nation states. Greece and Macedonia. But then I was thinking about the broader issue actually, and I think I can say a few things about it. We have to go back in history, and I think that it's very important if you want to understand what the Dutch, and I'm quite sure a lot of Europeans think about this problem, that we have to go back to the early days of European integration, the early 50s. And the whole idea of Europe is overcoming problems. That was the basic idea. I mean, France and Germany had just fought yet another devastating war on the European continent. 20 million people had died, and there was Mr. Schuman who said, let's stop it. Let's do something else. Let's try something completely new and different. Let's combine our coal and steel industry to make it physically impossible to ever start a war again. And that is something that is part of our collective memory in the Netherlands, that's what Europe is about. Europe is about peace and stability in the first place, and then it's also about economic prosperity. But the original goal of Europe was not so much the prosperity that came later. The original goal of Mr. Schuman was overcoming this problem that had caused so much misery over the last centuries. So, well, we all know that this was a very successful project, and we were one of the founding fathers of the European Economic Community in '57. And by that time we had only 6 members, and in the Dutch collective memory that's also very important, that we were, well, one of the founders, that it's our union, you know, we feel very much responsible for what's happening with the European Union. Then we had the first round of enlargements. The first was obviously with the United Kingdom, Ireland and Denmark. This had to do with the fact that Holland, as an Atlantic country, we very much wanted the UK in. If you want my personal opinion, this was a very big mistake. It's probably good for the economy, but if you want to deepen integration in Europe, the last thing you should do is ask the British to join, because the only thing that they did actually was hampering a deeper integration. And we see it, I won't go into detail, but we see it when it comes to the common foreign and security policy, we see that the UK plays a very strange role. Actually, they are more or less, at this very moment, they are boycotting the common foreign and security policy wherever we see it. So they try to make Europe as weak as possible, and I think, well, if you go back into history, it's one of our mistakes. I mean, the Dutch wanted the UK in, and here are the consequences. Then there were the other three, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, and there we already had this vision of Europe as a stabilizing factor of the EU, as a stabilizing factor in Europe. We said to those countries, you may join once you have overcome your dictatorships. And this idea was also very much the reasoning behind the bigger round of enlargement that we had in 2004 and 2007, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism. We thought that it would be good for stability and peace in Europe to give these countries a perspective. And I think that a lot of Dutch people also think that it was a historic necessity. We knew that it would completely change the whole idea of the European Union. I mean, you can't have a, cozy, small Northwestern European Union of 6 or maybe 12 nations, and certainly expand to 27 and think that nothing happens. I mean, it has completely changed the European Union, but it has also changed the way that the Dutch feel about the Union. I mean, it's obvious that we feel closer to Belgium than to Greece or to Latvia, for example. I mean, that's something that might have been underestimated by our political leaders, that it's the whole idea of Europe, that you can't just expand and demand of the people that they still feel the same about the whole project. I think that it's something that it was underestimated. But we thought that the Laken 10, as we call them, that it was also in our interest to have this stability here in this part of Europe. And I think that they were right. I mean, there was no serious alternative actually than EU membership. I think it's good to keep this in mind, and I will come to the Dutch position in a couple of issues that have to be explained by the notion of popular support. You know that in 2005 we had a referendum on the new constitution for Europe, and 63% of the Dutch voted no. We were founding fathers, we have supported European integration for decades, and suddenly we said no. And it's a turning point in also how our political leaders think about the European Union. And this reflects in it's reflected in our positions. I mean, you know that we have been, when it comes to enlargement, we have been very harsh on Serbia, for example. We said, no, we want Mladic and Hadžić in The Hague before we make any move towards EU integration of Serbia. It has to do with the fact that the popular support is diminishing in the Netherlands. It also has to do with our history, as you know, Srebrenica, the fact that we have the Yugoslav tribunal, and that we feel that there is a certain responsibility there. But it's very much felt in the Netherlands. You all know Jaap de Hoop Scheffer, I think, the former NATO Secretary General. He was also leader of the Christian Democratic Party. He was our Minister of Foreign Affairs. He was one of my old colleagues. I mean, we're both diplomats. But when he was in Parliament, he filed a motion, a resolution on Cyprus. And as you know, there's a big conflict there as well. And he said, we should not let Cyprus in before they have ended their conflict. It's their conflict, they should solve it, because otherwise we are going to adopt a problem that is, in essence, is not ours. This resolution got a majority in the Dutch parliament, but it was not executed by the Dutch government. As you know, this is how we do business in Europe. The pressure mounts, and then we all give in. I mean, that is one of the essences of doing business in Europe. And even though the outcome is sometimes unwanted by even our political leaders, we have a lot of compromises in Europe, because that's the only way to go forward. A lot of people think that not executing this motion of Mr. De Hoop Scheffer was a very big mistake. We are going to have the presidency of Cyprus in the second half of the next year, and Turkey has already threatened to put a halt to the nice relationship that we have with Turkey. I mean, they have threatened to make our life a lot more difficult because of the fact that, well, there is this bilateral issue, and I think that it proves in a way that Mr. De Hoop Scheffer wasn't all that wrong. I mean, it's now it has become our problem. In the old days we could say, no, it's a bilateral problem and you solve it and you use whatever. I mean, if we can assist you, it's fine, but for the rest it's a problem of these countries that can be solved within UN or with mediation or whatever. But now we see that it is our problem. Well, the same holds good, I think, for other problems that we see in Europe. I hope I'm not turning too much away from the original problem that you put on the table, Yvonne, but I think it's good to also explain a little bit about what we did last week in the Justice and Home Affairs Council when we vetoed the Schengen accession of Bulgaria and Romania. It has to do with the same idea that the popular support in the Netherlands is declining, and that if we see that there is still a lot of corruption and organized crime, then we cannot close our eyes. And that was the reason why the Dutch said, and we were not entirely alone, because Finland also vetoed this accession, but it has to do with a new feeling, actually, that if there is a problem, we should look it into the eyes and discuss it, but we should not make it our problem. Corruption is a very big problem, by the way, not only in Bulgaria and Romania, also in other parts of Europe and even in my country. But there it was felt that the Dutch government had a powerful tool to make a statement, and they said, okay, we are not, for this moment, we will not accept Bulgaria and Romania as new members of the Schengen zone. And now I'll come back to the problem here. I think that Macedonia, in a way, is a victim of the old problems that we took on board in Europe. We have become more harsh when it comes to enlargement. I mean, Croatia knows that it was a lot easier, actually, for the 10 countries that joined in 2004 than it was for Croatia. And even now we have a monetary mechanism in place that is that will monitor the Croatia before they will exceed in July 2013. And if we see that the events are not going in the right direction, then this might even put the accession at peril. So we see that it becomes more and more difficult for countries to become a member of the European Union. It also has to do with the idea that, in fact, taking over the acquis communautaire, that's not the biggest problem. I mean,
your inspections will certainly be on a European level, but the rule of law and the anti-corruption measures and things like that, we in the Netherlands feel that that is the core actually of the European Union. It's not about how you treat your chickens and if they're safe when you eat them, but it's about how you deal with the media, freedom of the press, how you deal with human rights, gay rights, for example. I mean, people read newspapers and they have seen that yesterday in Belgrade it was prohibited to have a gay pride. Yes, it's always because it's unsafe, but why are we going to let in a country where it's unsafe to be gay? Those are the questions that people in the Netherlands ask. So, and that's why with next enlargements, we would actually like to start with the difficult chapters of EU enlargement. 23 and 24, you should start with the rule of law and not say, okay, your roads are fine and your housing system is okay, and let's now talk about the rule of law. No, we should start with the rule of law, because that is so essential for trust in the whole European project. And if we lose the trust, we will lose the trust of our citizens, and then it will come to a halt. And it is, unfortunately, people see that they that their mistrust is proven right. For example, in the Greek crisis, people already mistrusted the Greek economy 10 years ago, before it entered the euro, and now they say, we told you so. There was a problem there and you didn't handle it in a correct way. It will be harder for Macedonia to enter, I think, first of all because of the problem, second because we are more strict in our criteria. I very much agree with what Mr. Kacin said. Well, reconciliation is a precondition for European integration, and that's it should be at the heart. It's not only something that Macedonians should take as a leading principle, but also those who live on the other side of the border. I think that we could also ask a little bit of common sense of your southern neighbors. Well, I said in the beginning that we don't have a dog in this fight. I think that we do have a dog in this fight. In that respect, that I think that stability is in the interest of Europe, stability on the Balkans. If you look at what's going on in Kosovo, if you read newspapers about Bosnia, then it is not so that things are always going in the right direction. There are a lot of problems, and that there are a lot of threats to stability here in this region. If you look at the map of Europe, you see this big white hole actually. The European Union still has a big white hole. We are united almost from Iceland, who will eventually become a member, to Greece, but the Western Balkans are still excluded. This is not something that could go on for decades. It's bad for European stability, I'm quite sure. But there are a lot of problems that have to be overcome, and the Macedonian name question is just one of them. Yes, let me end by quoting Shakespeare. A rose is a rose, and just by any other name it's a rose. So, thank you very much.
Ви благодарам, господин Фарла. Се надевам дека претходните говорници, господин Величковски и господин Фарла, испровоцираа кај учесниците на оваа конференција, кај гостите кои се во салата, да земат учество во расправата, па повелете се. Зашто да не? Господин Величковски, повелете.
Actually, it appears to me that we are rather defining things differently rather than we have differences. When speaking and referring to this name issue, name dispute, we're also referring to peace and stability as a precondition for prosperity. But in this part of Europe, in Western Balkans, in this part of the yet non-accessed EU, Southeastern Europe. And we also speak of responsibility, because I'm sure that you wouldn't have even considered a candidate status for Macedonia unless it was considered oriented towards peace and stability, which always requires good neighborly relations, enabling prosperity in the region, and of course seeking responsibility from Macedonia. But we also have two different roles. You come and you speak from a perspective of from a country which was one of the founders of the EU, and I speak as a local domestic politician here, which actually wants to stimulate exactly the very goals why we want to be in the EU, because we want peace and stability in Macedonia and in the region, because we see it as a precondition for prosperity, and because we are responsible to this and to the future generations, being aware that if 470 million and extra citizens see it right, that they are in the EU, that their countries are bound to follow the criteria, to follow the mainstream of the EU, then I'm sure that actually these 2 million, being Europeans by geography, must surely be Europeans as well by mentality. Of course, there are variations in each of our countries, but with all the conflicts going on, not only in Europe, but also in this part of Europe, after the Second World War, we must have understood something, that peace and stability, prosperity are an investment, and that we, especially after so many events occurring around Macedonia and even in Macedonia in 2001, that we surely have a responsibility far bigger than the generations before us, especially since in certain stages it appears to me that in the mentality of the, I wouldn't say average Macedonian politician, but in the mentality of a vast majority, the Berlin Wall has not fallen yet. And I think that we're also speaking here, that's why I mentioned some barriers are rather barriers of mentality, of prejudice, rather than, I don't know, borders, etc.
Благодарам. Мистер Фарла? Реплика.